awesome treat when we bring on the great Sean McDonough here on Shan and RJ 105.3 The Fan. Are you happy about 7 p.m. or it doesn't matter to you?
It doesn't matter to me. Playoff hockey, they could play at midnight. It'd be fun, and we'd be fired up to go do it.
I was thinking about this driving in. When we preview like the Rangers in the playoffs or the Cowboys, Troy Aikman catches heat from local fans or national media. John Smoltz, you hate our team. But I have not heard that at all this playoff run about hockey announcers. I haven't heard so-and-so loves the other team. Do you get that a lot calling hockey, Sean, or do you think that's just more reserved for other sports?
I think I get it. I don't have social media. I don't have any kind of Twitter account or Instagram or any of that, so I probably am not aware of it as much as other people in our business would be. I don't pay any attention to it anyway. You know, I don't care who wins. I'd like to see an exciting game. You know, it's that's really the only thing I care about. Hopefully a close, exciting game, maybe a game 7 that goes to overtime. I mean, the last time I was here, we did game 7 against Colorado, and for 2 periods, that game was pretty boring and it wasn't very lively in that arena. And then Mikko Rantanen took over, and he really hasn't stopped since. So that's what we hope for, something like that people are going to remember.
Sean, you got the Boston ties at DFW. We're more known for football and the Cowboys. Talk about DFW's growth and development with these Stars runs that you've seen when you come visit and work here.
Yeah, obviously, these runs now to the Western Conference Final, I think, have helped grow interest and grow the fan base. I saw Jay Gottinger was on SportsCenter with Matt Berry, I think it was yesterday, and he talked about just in the time that he's been here, the noticeable difference. He said it's now like a northern city in the United States in terms of the interest level and enthusiasm for hockey. And, we see that when we're in the arena. I mean, that game 7, as I said, was pretty dead for the first 2 periods against Colorado, in part because, Dallas wasn't really doing anything. I think they had 10 shots on goal in that game through the 2 periods. But, in the 3rd period when they made that great comeback, that arena is as lively as any in the league. I love doing games here. It's a great broadcast position. A lot of these places we go, we're dangling from the ceiling. We're in the worst seat in the arena at the back of the upper deck. So to be here, kind of in a central position, a good spot relative to the ice, it's a real difference maker for us. And the same is true of Edmonton. So from a selfish standpoint, it's nice to be doing this series because we have a good vantage point, which is not always the case.
Are you calling? How much are you calling on the monitor versus just watching the ice live?
Yeah, almost never on the monitor. The monitors aren't very big in our hockey booths, and the puck moves so fast, and sometimes the directors are taking cutaway shots to a check in the corner while the puck is going someplace else. It's just really hard to follow. I've tried that. I've asked a lot of play-by-play guys in hockey, do you call it off the monitor? I've never heard anybody say yes. And for a while I tried binoculars when we were in some of these high places, but I'm just not good enough at following the puck or keeping the binoculars wide enough to, take in everything that you need to see. So, it's great to be low here. Some of these, like Carolina last night, that is so far away from the ice. I know the people watching don't care. And so far back that, a lot of times you're just guessing who has the puck, or did that puck hit the goalie, or did it miss the net, or did somebody block it out in front, or did somebody tip it in? So it's great to be in a vantage point like we are here in Edmonton, where most of the time you're pretty sure who the player is who made the play or where the puck wound up.
Is the big Stanley Cup playoff game, big baseball game, basketball? What is if you had to choose one to call a big game? Is it clearly hockey?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and I'm probably going to give a lousy answer because I really do. The thing I've enjoyed most about my career, especially at my time at ESPN, is, the opportunity to do a lot of different things, to do major college football, do baseball, playoff games, do major championship golf, whatever else they've been nice enough to let me do. So I really do enjoy them all, but I do think there's nothing like the intensity of a Stanley Cup playoff game. I'm just sitting here this morning as part of my preparation, watching the Game 6 Saturday night here between the Stars and Winnipeg, and the intensity of that game from start to finish was palpable, even just watching the tape of it. So, I don't think there's anything better than Stanley Cup playoff hockey. Yeah, I think there are a lot of things in sports that are similar, which is what makes sports great.
Shan McDonough, who is on the call for Stars Oilers tonight, joining us here at 105.3 The Fan. All right, as we prep for this series, it's McDavid hasn't had a ton of goals. The Stars have gotten scoring basically from 5 guys the entire postseason. Which one has to change for each team to wind up finding a way to win?
Well, I think Edmonton has proven, they've had good depth of scoring too. And you're right about Dallas. They've kind of leaned heavily on a few guys, especially Rand and his line. But I think that bodes well for Dallas. I mean, the fact that they have beaten 2 really good teams. I mean, Colorado and Winnipeg. I don't think any other team that's still alive has beaten 2 teams that good to get to the conference final. And to, beat those 2 teams with no goals from Robertson, with 1 goal in 13 games from Marchment, 1 goal in 13 games in the playoffs from Ben, no goals from Duchesne. I mean, sooner or later, those guys are going to join the party and do something. Edmonton has proven they can win without goal scoring from McDavid. He's the leading assist man in the playoffs, and obviously that's important too. So I think those Dallas guys are going to come to life in that series, and I think if and when they do, it'll really help their chances.
So, Shan, when you're doing play-by-play, you're also, telling stories when it comes to a series like this and things. When you're approaching the series and you're prepping for Oilers Stars, what do you look at as these are the 2 to 3, kind of big stories or angles that you think need highlighting heading into this series?
Well, I think coming on the air tonight, the biggest story is, it's a rematch, but there's been a pretty significant turnover on the rosters of both of these teams since last year, and obviously the most significant one is Rantanen. And I think coming on the air tonight, what you just referenced about McDavid, I think that the biggest subject matter would be the star power in this series, particularly those 2 guys who, to me, are the 2 leading players right now through half of the playoffs. It's hard to believe we're only halfway through the playoffs, given everything that's happened for these 2 teams and around the Stanley Cup playoffs. But they're the favorites to win the Conn Smythe Trophy as the MVP in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now. So I think that's part of it. I'm fascinated by Pete DeBoer. I think this is the 8th time he's been in the conference finals in the expansion era. Only Scotty Bowman and Al Arbor, who are walk-in Hall of Famers, first ballot Hall of Famers, 2 of the all-time greats, have coached in more, but he hasn't won a Stanley Cup. So, I think last year we saw his good pal Paul Maurice, who's a coaching lifer, who was coming up on 30 years in coaching, never won the Stanley Cup, won it in a Game 7. I think that's something, I am interested in the people part of this, and I think he's a hell of a coach and a great guy, and I think there are a lot of people, if they were able to win 2 more rounds, who'd be really happy for Pete. I think he's already regarded as one of the best coaches of this era, but I think a lot of times you need the championship to kind of solidify your legacy all time, and I think that could happen for Pete as it did for Paul Maurice last year if they win 8 more games.
Yeah, Shan, how does a guy like him keep getting fired? I mean, all he does is go to conference championship games.
Yeah, I don't know. Hockey playoffs, hockey coaching rather, is the worst in terms of job security. I mean, it's just ridiculous in this sport how quickly these teams cycle through coaches. And I think, the good organizations like the Stars realize, okay, yeah, he's coached 4 other teams, but he's still one of the best coaches in the league, and we'd be happy to have them. We've seen Peter Laviolette. I think he coached 6 teams now. He just got let go by the Rangers. Paul Maurice has bounced around. I think people realize he's been one of the great coaches now for almost 3 decades. So I don't know. These ownership groups in the NHL, management seem to have, short leash with coaches, but I think the Stars were smart enough to realize he's one of the best, and he's proving that again with what he's doing here in Dallas.
Shan McDonough joining us here on 105 through the Fan. Shan, you mentioned the 3 straight conference finals appearances for Dallas. It feels like in sports, whenever anybody has a run like that, it's one of 2 narratives. It's either it's a matter of time, they're gonna succeed, they're gonna win a title here, or it's you're running out of time. Like you need to make it happen within this window. Which one of those do you think Dallas falls into? Do you think this is a core that it's like, hey, this is only a matter of time, it's going to happen for them eventually? Or is it more, hey, they've got to take advantage of this window right now?
Well, it's a great question because I definitely agree with the premise. I think the New York Rangers were an example of that. They had a window here the last few years, but it was an aging nucleus, and I think we saw that age kind of took hold this year in what a disappointment they were. I mean, they went from winning the President's Trophy last season to not even making the playoffs this year. I don't really feel that way about Dallas. That obviously they have some players who are key players on the team who are older, Duchesne, Ben certainly, Sagan, would be another. But I think they also have a lot of really terrific young talent. And to me, the most important position is the goalie. And, you have a 26-year-old star who's in Ottinger who's proven he's one of the best, and I think he's going to be one of the best for a long time to come. So I don't think the window is closing here. I do really like their chances. Excuse me. I think we have 4 outstanding teams left. I would be very surprised if Florida did not win the Eastern Conference Final. I felt that way before last night, and what they did in Game 1 of that series just cemented it. But I think a lot of people, myself included, around the NHL felt like if Dallas could get through the first round without Robertson and Heiskanen, look out. Because, when you add those two guys to a team that was good enough to beat Colorado without them, they have everything you need to win the Stanley Cup. Now, so does Edmonton, and so does Florida, and Carolina probably does too. I think they're the least likely of the 4 left to win it. But it would not surprise me at all if Dallas wins the Stanley Cup this year and doesn't have to worry about the window closing.
Sean, you mentioned Florida. They have just really, played well 3 of the last 4 games. I think it's like 17-4. They're outscoring opponents on the road. Are they just that team that is, going in, you could pencil it in, they're hitting their stride, they're built for the postseason, they got the goalie for the postseason, that this is kind of something we got to get used to?
Yes. Simple answer to your question, yes. And a lot of us thought they were crazy when they totally changed the direction of their franchise. They won the President's Trophy, 4 years ago? Yeah. When Andrew Brunette was the coach, and then they went out early in the playoffs, and they said, we cannot win the Stanley Cup playing this way, being a high-flying team that leans on scoring and tries to win 5 to 4 games. That's just not going to work in the playoffs. So they got rid of Andrew Brunette, which surprised a lot of us. They hired Paul Maurice, and, as I said, he has had a great resume, but he had never really done anything in the playoffs. Remember, he had a losing record in the playoffs over a 20-plus year span before he got to Florida and went on this run now of 3 years in a row. But, they're built for the playoffs. We talked about the goalie. They have Bobrovsky's been one of the best in the world for 15 years. They're just so tough, so physical. But it's not just that. I think the reason why I like them is instead of Carolina, they play a similar style, but they just have more guys who can score goals for you. With what they did now on the third line and adding Brad Marchand, that was a brilliant pickup as it turns out, and they've done that the last few years. So I think they're really hard to play against. I think, when they get to the Stanley Cup final, I think they will. It's going to be a heck of a matchup against whichever one of these two teams wins the West.
You're the man. We really appreciate your time. Have a fantastic call and a great series, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on, and have a blessed day. Should be a fun series.